Thank you. It's great to be here. Nice to see so many people interested in older people. It's great. And nice to see the gray hair, too. I have some of the same. This is about attitudes. Attitudes matter, but I'm going to focus on one particular attitude that is so important for our older people. I've been working with older people for, quite a long time, 30 years, in a variety of settings. I started working with older people before I had my education. Then I went back to school. I was a late bloomer. So I know about aging personally as well as professionally. But we do grow old in context. We grow old in our families, in our communities, in our organizations, in our societies. And this context is extremely important. I've been quoted in the newspaper as saying it's a devastating undercurrent, ageism, in our society. Everywhere I look, I can see it and hear it. Ageism is held in our beliefs in society. And I don't know what your grandparents and your parents said to you as you were growing up about age, but those things color our views, and they're important. So I see ageism in families. I see it in caregiving relationships between the children and the parents, or other relationships as well. I see it in proxy decision making, people making decisions on behalf of older people, but they're really making the decisions more for themselves than for the older person. The sign of a good proxy decision maker is someone who struggles to figure out what would be the decision that old person would make if they were able to make it, and that they make that decision on their behalf rather than the decision they would like to see. So I've seen it in families. Families sometimes take unfair advantage. One of the clues that I know I'm dealing with that kind of situation, and this may strike close to home, but it is true. I hear children saying we had to put mom in a home. That word put indicates that there was no decision made on the part of the older person. And you can actually talk to older people, even if they're confused. You can seek those moments of lucidity, and you can talk to people when their minds are clearer. And then the next time their mind is clearer, you can talk with them again. So it's not impossible, if someone is confused, to talk with them and hear what they have to say. Also, we see ageism in government policies. We see advanced directives, rules for institutionalization. These are important for people who are very disabled and very unable to make their own decisions. But sometimes, in some situations, they can be taken advantage of. And I heard some questions and discussion just as I came in there. It's important to ask yourself, does this seem fair? Because your own gut reaction will tell you whether it's fair or not. You know what's fair and what's not. We medicalize the problems of aging. And I've got some examples of that. Sometimes loneliness or elder abuse are defined as health problems. And in fact, there was a study done a number of years ago that said that a lot of older people went to the doctor repeatedly, not because they needed health care, but because they were lonely. They wanted somebody to talk to. And we see ageism in organizations. How do organizations that you work with treat older people? Do you ever see older people treated poorly? I see a few nods. And in the workplace, there's stereotypical beliefs about about the competence of older workers. Well, they're old, so, they're not keeping up. They can't move fast. Have any of you ever heard those kinds of things? It's actually not true. Older people accomplish as much as younger people in a day, and actually they're absent less often than younger people. And they do keep up if they're offered the training, but research has proven or has shown in the past that organizations don't always offer the training to older workers. And so they don't keep up. That's true. So it's an ism, it's one of the last isms, ageism. But it has the tacit approval of our society. When, when people are old, or when people are talking about older people, they often tell jokes. How many groups of people do you know for whom jokes are accepted? Jokes about those people. We used to joke about people with different skin color. We used to joke about people from different provinces. We've joked about a lot of things. But now the only joke that seems to be allowed by our society is the joke about old people. It's not okay. I must have Alzheimer's. Well, if you've ever known anyone with Alzheimer's, you will know it's not a joke. I'm having a senior moment. Well, growing old is actually a dramatic success. The other alternative is death, early death. So you should be saying hurrah when you're announcing that you're older. Some people say, I can't remember, I must be getting old. Well, sometimes we don't save those kinds of memories. What I say to young people when they say that to me is, well, when you're on vacation, do you remember what day it is? Well, no. Well then, maybe they don't need to remember that particular fact. They've put it on hold. Older people have been called bed blockers, taking up beds that should be there for younger people. But the older people have equal rights to health care. There's one coffee shop I've gone to recently because it was convenient, where the person selling coffee calls me hun. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to say to her the next time she does it. It'll be something good, but I haven't figured it out yet. Here's the one about putting mom in a home. I already revealed that earlier, so I won't do that again. It's evidence, though, that the family member knows that they have the power to make the decision. Now, have you ever been in, this is my remote, it's not a tape recorder, it's my remote for my hearing aids. All right, so have you ever been in a grocery store lineup and had a very old woman in front of you, or farther in front of you than just you? There's maybe someone behind them, and there's maybe people behind you too. Have you ever been in that situation? And the old woman is going like this. And, right? Yeah. And have you looked around you when she's doing that? And have you noticed looks on the faces? That is ageism. This woman is trying to sort out which coin is which. She wants to make proper change so she won't waste the till person's time, although, you could argue about that. But she's trying to sort out her money. The tips of her fingertips are less sensitive, so she has trouble sorting out her money. But if you look at the faces in the lineup, you will see ageism right in front of you. And power and ageism are inseparable. In healthcare, we often have inadequate long-term care. I have heard so many people complain about healthcare, about long-term care settings. This is the long-term care settings who are available for the whole public, not the ones that charge higher rates and have better services. I'm talking about the long-term care facilities that the average Canadian can get access to. I hear people complaining about that, and I hear people complaining about home care. And you know what the real problem is? Not enough money. There's not enough money in the system for our care of our elderly people. And I believe that that is tied directly to the ageist attitudes in our society. If everybody respected their older person, and if everybody could keep in the front of their mind, not the back, that one day, if they're lucky, it'll be them, I think we would make more requests for better services, for more money in the system. You know, there's things like sometimes care providers will support dependents rather than independents because it's easier for them. I mean, you can't really blame the care providers, although, you know, some of them are not good. But really, they're doing a difficult job, and often they have 2 or 3 jobs. In home care, they're running from house to house to house to deliver the care. They're doing their best often. In fact, I almost always think they're doing their best. But that doesn't mean there's not problems. There's a waitlist ultimatum that has been given that I've heard several times. If you don't take this bed, you'll be off the list. And then you have to wait a while before you come back on the list. Home care, there's not enough money, not enough support. As I said before, Hugman, who is an author who writes about care and caring professions, and I'm a social worker and he's a social worker, he wrote that the clients of the professional, if the client has little power, then so does the professional. So it's like parallels that run through the system, and we need to change that. So when we're talking about power, and this was what I did my dissertation on, so I'm interested in power. We restrict individual rights. We have a policing mentality to control abuse in institutions. But I ask you to consider this. Okay, so you bring in inspectors. I mean, you need inspectors. I'm not saying we shouldn't have inspectors. But can inspectors really stop abuse? This abuse is happening behind closed doors with a frail, compromised, not strong older person who can't fight back. It's happening behind closed doors. The inspector is not going to go behind that closed door. How are they going to know? So it's not really the best solution. And then we talk about senior citizens. Why do we have to add that word citizen? I invite you to think about that. Is that because we don't, as a society, really believe that older people are fully functioning citizens, and so we have to remind everybody? So it's worth thinking about. And we take Social Security, you know, our old age security, and guaranteed income supplement if you get that, and the typical retirement age, and you take those things together. So before, when we used to insist people retire at 65, and you had the old age security, they protect older people, but they keep them poor at the same time. Then there's elder abuse, that is issues of trust, issues of power, issues of protection. These are all related to power. And then we have the rising healthcare costs being blamed on older people. And some advocates have called this demographic terrorism. In other words, you know, blaming the people with the gray hair for the high health costs. Well, health costs are highest during the last 2 years of your life, whether you're 5 or whether you're 85. So I don't think it exactly applies. What about, and then we have an atmosphere where assisted suicide is being supported by more and more people. That scares me when I hear that. Especially in an atmosphere where older people are not respected. What about just offering better care? Novel concept. In my research, no one in a long-term care facility at no level of worker, not the clients, not the nurse, the frontline providers, not even the executive director, thought they had any decision-making power. They all thought the power is being made by someone else. And yet, as I said before, if you're going behind closed doors and delivering personal care to old, frail people, how much more power can you have than that, really? But people didn't recognize that. They thought their bosses made the power. And the boss thought Queen's Park made the power, made the decision. But these people are implementing it. And there were a couple of interesting examples that I can give you from my research. One was I saw some old people sitting in a public area. These were people that were in the locked area, however, so they had advanced dementia. But I was watching them from behind a window. They couldn't see me, and I was just watching. And one day I was there was a care provider walking around giving people snacks. It's great that they have snacks in long-term care. And so she went up to the person and said, "Mrs. Smith, would you like cranberry juice or apple juice?" And Mrs. Smith, and she smiled. And Mrs. Smith reached out and took the cranberry juice. That was all good. But then a few days later I was there, and it was a different care provider. And first of all, that care provider seemed very unhappy or depressed or something. I'm not sure what. She was kind of groaning as she walked around. And she just plunked the glass down in front of this woman. Not the same woman, a different woman. And then she went down the hall, the person giving out the drinks. And the older woman looked at the glass and went like that and pushed it on the ground. She took her power, right? Then there was a nurse aide who said, when I asked, "Don't you want to tell me about decision making?" Because this person was saying, oh, he wasn't sure if they should fill out the questionnaire or not. And then they said, "Well, yeah, there is one decision we can make." And I said, "What's that?" And this person said, "We can decide not to go to work that day." And if you know anything about long-term care, you will know that absenteeism and people calling in sick is one of the biggest problems they have. But you see that if you're in an untenable situation and you're having to care for more people than you reasonably can manage, it's one of the ways to get a break. And then when I asked an old woman, "How much say did you have in moving to this home?" This is what she said. "I signed the paper, but there was some pushing going on." So what can we do? Well, we can broaden our perspectives to start with. We can look beyond our narrow focus on the individual and the narrow definition of health care. And we can start to see more broadly and look at our whole society and what is happening with older people in our country. Remember that you have power and you engage in conversations about aging. And you have a right to stand up and say, "Hey, that joke put me down. I'd rather we didn't tell jokes about old people," if you don't feel good about it. I am trying to figure out what to say to that coffee shop person who calls me hun. So you have power, and you can use it. And remember that all of us have rights enshrined in Canadian law, whether we're old or caregivers or family members. And these are from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Freedom of expression, we've heard a lot about that in the last few weeks. Right to equality. Right to life, liberty, and personal security. The right not to be deprived thereof. The right to not be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. The right not to be subjected to cruel or unusual punishment. These are rights we all have. And I'll just leave that point there. I won't go farther. The other thing is to keep it personal. You know, watch your own ageist attitudes. We all have them. I mean, I have caught myself saying things, you know. I'm sure that you have them too. Deal with your own ageism and watch for or identify it when it surfaces. Ask yourself, how would you feel if this person was younger? Would you feel the same way? And stop hiding your age. Show it off. You might wonder what the pink stripe in my hair is all about. Well, when people ask or comment, I say, yes, I have gray hair, but I'm not dead yet. Don't count me out. Don't count me out. So show it off. It's a success story. It's a model of success when you're allowed to live beyond, when you manage to live beyond, 75. Lots of people die way before 75. And look for the strengths that older people have. Don't look for the problems all the time. There are lots of people out there who will look for the problems. You could look for the strengths. Remind those caregivers about your loved one who's getting the care, all of their strengths and their assets. Remind them of what they used to do in their career. They're a whole person. They're not just a shell of a person. And the question that I have found that works really well with my students, and I'll just ask you this. Think back 10 years. And think about what you knew 10 years ago. And I asked 20-year-olds this. What did you know 10 years ago? And then do you know more now than you did then? How many of you would say yes to that? Yeah. You know more now than you did 10 years ago. Well, then when do you expect that to stop? Think about it. This is wisdom. Wisdom develops as you grow older and older. It's life experience integrated with knowledge, integrated with your interpersonal relationships. That is what the world needs now, more than ever. And unless we respect our older people and start to ask people, well, what did you know 10 years ago? Did you know as much as you do now? Start to ask people that question. Because I know that all of you have a lot more to offer now than you had 10 or 15 years ago. Right? Yeah. I always say the reason I work with old people is because old people are experts in living. And they are. I don't care how many digital devices you have or how many razzle-dazzle TVs you have. Those things won't tell you how to raise a child. They won't tell you how to deal with interpersonal conflict, not in the way that you can gather when you've lived through it. Because some of those things don't change year after year. We're wasting our most precious resource, our wise elders. And older Canadians need our help. We know about resources like the World Health Organization and the innate strengths people hold about communication and social determinants of health. We know about the value of old people. We can change the world, and I firmly believe that. And this is my agenda for the rest of my career, and I hope it goes on for a long time. We have to make the world more age-friendly. Thank you. So perhaps you have some questions. I don't know whether we have time. Do we, Mary? I lost track of time. Yeah.
Can you tell me about Commonpoint?
Yeah, sure. Commonpoint. Commonpoint. I have some cards here. I'll leave them here. We're an organization, myself and another social worker or two, and we try to build consensus in families. For example, families will call us and say, well, we can't persuade mom to go into a home. Well, probably the horse is out of the barn in that case, or might be, if you know what I mean. But we go and try to get people to really talk and to really listen to what the other is saying. Because my experience is, even when there's confusion, that when people are able to move a little bit away from being so terrified that they're going to be locked up and never be able to get out. And when I say, well, it's not a jail, you know, you can make your own decision. And when the child begins to understand that their mother is just terrified, that's all. She, when you get reasonable and you talk about how worried you are as a daughter, instead of saying, well, we're going to go and see this place and have lunch, and then suddenly they're moving. If you go and if instead of that you say, you know, Mom, I'm so worried about you. I'm so afraid that you're going to fall or get hurt, and I don't know how to handle it. You know, if the child is being honest, the parent can see the emotion and hear the emotion. And if the relationship is decent, they'll start talking and listening to each other. So we do that with families. And we also help teams of workers in long-term care and in other care organizations. And we also do research and planning and a number of other related things. But it's all based on the same thing, trying to make the world a better place for older people.
Being in the same community with your doctor, your family, your friends. Even here in King City, there is a lot of the seniors must move to Richmond Hill, Parry Sound, Barrie, other places because the government or the real estate people have not supplied enough affordable homes for seniors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's too bad. And then also they don't drive.
Right.
And I know we could work on that.
No, you're exactly right. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was doing a focus group one time with older people. And the first thing that somebody said when I said, what are the unmet social needs in this community? This person said, we need more bungalows with no basements. They don't need a basement. They can't go up and down the stairs anyways. It costs more to have a basement. So you could have just the foundation and a bungalow, and it would be cost effective for them. But, you know, that doesn't make a lot of money for the developers.
Make sure it has enough insulation underneath.
Make sure it has enough insulation underneath. I agree.
I'm living through.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. I think there was another question, was there? No? Okay. Thank you very much.